Hey everybody, Sirturmund here again. And today I want to bring you guys something a little bit different. So you guys have all been asking me to do some carry build reactions. Unfortunately, I was away from home this past weekend, so I was not able to do like a reaction on Jhin and when his cards got revealed. And then when I wanted to do a reaction yesterday, we got the first half of Illaoi's card, so it didn't make sense to do anything until we got the reveal on Illaoi as well, which we got today. So today you guys gonna get a 2-for-1. You get my reaction to every single card that has been revealed since Friday until today. So that includes Jhin, that includes Illaoi, and that includes a bunch of variety cards that you might have seen around that help a lot of regions out there. Very excited about stuff like Throws and Deep. So this is gonna be no gameplay today. It's just gonna be me talking about the carry reactions and kind of giving you my first reactions to the. I actually haven't been putting too much. I haven't been looking into these cards as much as I should have because I wanted to kind of give you guys some of my genuine first reactions. So for a lot of them, I'm really gonna be still like a little bit in the loop on them. But anyways, before we start, I just wanted to say that this interactive card reveal that happened on Friday was amazing. It's probably one of the best things that Riot has done, and I'm really glad they did it that way. It was really, really super fun. So I'm hoping that they continue doing things like this for later in the future, so that we can, experience stuff like this as well. But anyways, so let's go ahead and get started with the reveal, the cards reveal. And I'm gonna be using Runeterra AR to look at the new cards because I like how they present them here, just a few at a time. So we're gonna be kind of going from the bottom to the top, and kind of going from there. So first, let's talk about the Maker. So the Maker is an Ionia card, 3/2. Play, recall a unit with less power than me. With 3 mana, I don't expect this to be great because it's 3 mana and it only has 3 attack, right? I guess because you play it, you get a unit and you get to recall something. It actually might not be bad. Now that I think about it, it might not be bad. So it might not be bad because imagine playing this in like an aggro deck, for example. It's a pretty good tempo swing because you can recall. There's a lot of things out there that have 3 attack. Oh, it has to be less. It has to be less. It's not less or equal, right? So it has to be 2 or 1 attack. Oh, that's unfortunate. So it's kind of like a fearsome unit, but not really fearsome because you're just recalling something. I really don't think it's going to be that useful because it's a lot of units, like think of like Concologies and stuff like that, that if you recall them, you're just giving the opponent benefits, right? You're letting them play the Concologies again. So I think it's a little bit meh. I could see having some uses. I don't expect it to be the case, though. Let's talk about the Harbinger of the Troll. So this card is a play effect. Well, actually, I guess it's not a skill. It just happens right away. It doesn't go the stack. So it's a summon a frozen troll or advance your frozen trolls by 1 round. And it's a 2 mana 2/2. This card is huge. And it's literally everything that trolls have been asking for. One of the worst experiences with playing trolls is either you don't get your troll on 1 or you don't get Lissandra on 3. So imagine not getting a troll until like turn 4, 5, or 6. You almost lose the game every time. Like troll used to lose to itself. With an additional 3 copies of this card, your chances of getting a troll early on within the first 3 turns go up so much. Because now you can get the one cost landmark, you can get this, or you can get Lissandra. So you have 9 cards out of the 40 cards in your deck that could summon a troll by turn 3 the earliest, which is very, very important. So I think this card is amazing. And even if you already have trolls in the field, you can still summon this as a kind of like a blocker against aggro or aggressive strategies, and then just advance all your trolls by 1 round. Like, it's never gonna feel bad to draw this. Because you're always either gonna summon a frozen troll if you don't have one, or you're gonna advance your frozen trolls if you already have them on the field. So I think it's really, 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 really good. I think this card is gonna actually make trolls really viable again. So let's move on a little bit up here. So Kinku's Call, a 4 mana Ionia spell, slow. Summon a Keeper of the Mask now or at the next round start. Draw 1. So Keeper of the Mask is that 2-drop from Ionia that buffs like all the units. When you summon it, it buffs like all the units by +1 attack, if I remember correctly. Is that good enough? So I like the fact that you can choose. You can choose whether you summon it right now or you can prepare like a big open attack on your following turn, right? Because you can have this get summoned at the start of your attack and then just attack right away without having to develop. That's actually really cool and adds a lot of flexibility. My concern, and he also just once, so it kind of replaces itself. My concern with this card is that I cannot think of like an archetype right now that really wants to use this card to the full advantage, right? Stuff like Freljord Elusives, for example, might have found some use for this, but that archetype is not as strong as it once was. With King of Wayfinder also getting nerfed, you're less likely to have a wider board to fully take advantage of Keeper of the Mask. So I think this is going to be not really that playable. So we'll see. Protected Broadfather, attack. It's an 8 mana dragon, 7/7 from the mask. Attack, draw a unit. If it's a dragon, summon it, attack it. This is where memes are made of. This is one of the best meme cards ever. Ever. It's really expensive. Because it costs 8, I really don't think it's going to be really that competitively viable. However, you could build a deck where potentially your only unit in the deck is the Protected Broodfather. So when you get one in your field and you attack with it, it summons another one, and that one will summon another one, and kind of go like that in the chain, right? And then all you need to have is counterfeit copies to duplicate your Broodfathers. That's the dream. And then you summon like 6 Broodfathers in a single turn. What's the problem with that? That this card costs 8 mana, and it requires you to have almost no other units in your deck to really make it efficient. So yeah, I don't see Broodfather being that playable because it's really expensive. 8 mana is very, very expensive. Think about all the 8 mana drops that are in the game that don't see any play. Same thing with 9 mana, right? Games are not going that long, and this card is not doing anything as it drops in the field. It requires to attack as well to get an advantage, to get a draw. So if the opponent is able to remove this right away with like a Vengeance, then all you did was spend 8 mana, opponent spends 6 mana, or they can just stun it too or something like that, and you don't get any value. So I don't think Broodfather is going to be that great, unfortunately. I don't see it play. I don't see it being played. Let's move on to the station. This is a 2 mana Ionia card with a 4/4 start line, but it has Ephemeral. But it has an ability, a skill that when you play, it stuns an enemy. This is such a good card. Such a good card. It's cheap enough, right? By stunning something, you either get rid of a blocker or just completely stop the opponent from attacking. But the way that I see this hand, I see it more like an offensive tool. I see it more like, hey, you're playing like an aggressive deck. You can play this, stun the opponent, stun like an opponent's blocker, like a chump blocker, right? And then you're attacking for 4, which is like a decimate, right? I think this card is so good with aggro, and you'll see why once we start looking at Jhin later on. If you guys already have seen Jhin and what he does, then I think this is going to be a staple in any single Jhin deck, just because of how good it is to play this. Oh my goodness, this card I think is nuts. This card is nuts. We can also think about playing this in stuff like Hecarim Set Ephemerals, right? Again, the key part here is that we can stun a blocker. And if you're in a tough spot later in the game, you can stun an attacker, right? You can stun like a big Trundle or stun a big Tryndamere and the opponent's attack turn and just completely negate their attack, all for a 2 mana unit. Doesn't seem bad to me, because technically you're stopping 2 things, right? Think about it. It's such a good development punishment. If the opponent develops a unit on their attack turn, you can use this to stun 1 unit, and then the other units that they have cannot attack into you because you have a 4/4 on the board that's just going to block and trade with them. So it can literally just stop any aggressive tool from your opponent while also being able to be an aggressive tool on its own. It's so flexible, and I think this card is one of the best cards that has been revealed in this expansion. Let's move on a little bit higher here. Okay, so we get to the Winding Light. So the Winding Light is a 7 mana, 6/5 Overwhelm that has Nightfall, give other allies +2/+1 Overwhelm this round. This is a great finisher. This is a really, really good finisher because you're giving all your other allies to attack and also giving Overwhelm. Think of things like Pack Mentality, right? Pack Mentality is like that 7 mana spell for Freljord that buffs your whole board by like +2/+2 and give everything Overwhelm. This is so much, I guess it's not so much better because Pack Mentality is a spell, which means that you can use to spell mana. But I think this kind of does like a similar effect, right? While also giving you another unit that you can attack with because the Wind and Light has Overwhelm itself. Oh my goodness. I think it's a great finisher. Ironically though, I don't think it's a card that Nightfall decks use. Although this card itself has Nightfall, I don't think it's a card that Nightfall decks actually use. Think of like the Eclipse Dragon, right? You really don't use that card on Nightfall, even though technically it has Nightfall and Daybreak. I think this is more of a finisher for like these big Targon go wide boards, just because of how much value you can provide there. So yeah, I think this can see some play. We'll see. Chamber of Renewal is a 3-mana landmark from Shurima. When you summon a champion, destroy me to grant it +2/+1 and spell shield. It's a grant, it's a landmark. It's giving your unit spell shield and more attack. When I think of this, the first thing I think of is stuff like Talia and Six, right? You can give your champion spells, you can grant your champion spell shield, give it bigger stats, and now if you ever get like an absorber or you just get Overwhelm from the 5-drop unit that they have that give the champions Overwhelm, now your Six and Talia have Overwhelm and you could get spell shield, right? And the landmarks are not bad with that deck already. Now, it is a little bit expensive, right? 3 mana is a lot for something that does nothing until you have a champion on the field. So that probably is enough to hold it back. But it still seems really good. And I guess, let's talk about the fact that we also have Nasus here. Is this good enough with Nasus Trash, for example? I don't know. So my problem with Nasus Trash and using this, because the Nasus, I guess it lets you attack with your Nasus. Like, it lets you get spell shield on the Nasus right away. So pretty much you can make your level 1 Nasus be like a level 2. Because now level 1 Nasus got Fearsome again. And now you can also do this. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm not sure I dig this card that much. But it can create some really funny combos where you can just like go all in. Like, Another thing that I think of like Udyr action, right? Udyr Shurima. You can give your Udyr spell shield right away, and then Udyr gets really big out of control. That could be an option as well. It creates some nice scenarios. I just don't know if it's gonna be good enough because it's a 3 mana do nothing until you summon a champion. So, anyways, let's move on to Ratna, the Lore Keeper. When I summon grant units in your deck my stats, then draw a unit with 5+ power. And she's a 6-drop with 2/2. So pretty much for a 6-mana unit, you're giving everything in your deck +2/+2. Except that if you somehow manage to buff up the Ratna, then this ability becomes even bigger and bigger, right? So think of stuff like, even something simple like Omen Hawk. And if you hit the Ratna, now instead of adding +2/+2 to all your units, you're adding +3/+3. Is that good enough? I don't know. I think the problem is that all the units that is buffing are still in your deck. And you're dropping this at the earliest in turn 6. All your units are still in your deck. So you still need to be able to actually draw those units to get the value from this. I feel like this card is a little bit too slow to actually do what it wants to do and get to that position of being like a game ender. So I don't believe that this is going to see a lot of play either. This is the skill for the Captive Greyback. So let's move on to the Captive Greyback. So the Captive Greyback is a 4-mana 2/3 Overwhelm from Nasus that has a skill that says attack. I deal 3 to my blocker. If he's dead or gone, I deal 3 damage to the enemy Nasus instead. This card might not seem like it's a lot, but it's actually pretty good. I mean, it is a little bit expensive at 4 mana. But it's almost unblockable. Because any unit that blocks this card is going to take 3 damage. Right? So think of how annoying it is to block something like a 6 that deals 1 or deals 2 to your unit. Or even Talia, right? This is like that as well, except that it's a Nasus. So it can be played instead of like an aggro deck. Right? Or something that wants to do like a tempo swing. This is pretty good. This is pretty good. I like it, especially if you can buff up the Overwhelm somehow. If you can buff up the unit, Like think of something like Brothers Bond with this, for example. You make this a 4/3 that's always getting rid of the blocker's life, so you're able to push the overwhelm damage. I think this card has potential. The cost concerns me a little bit, but I think it can be pretty good. We'll see how it goes. Then we move on to a 5-mana Ionia spell, Storm of Blades. It's slow. For the rest of the game, when you Blade Dance, summon another attacking blade. Blade Dance once. I'm a big fan of Illaoi, and I don't know, I'm a little bit tentative on this card. It could either be completely trash, or it could actually be the next staple in Illaoi decks. Remember that people used to think Defiant Dance was bad, when it ends up now being one of the better cards in Illaoi, because some of that value that you get can be really good. My concern with this card is that at 5 mana, you're probably not playing this until at least turn 4 or 5. Because it's probably better for you as a Illaoi player to actually just still do your regular units early on and not play this until later on. Which means that this effect might come in a little bit too late when you're not really taking full advantage of it. And it also feels a little bit win more. It feels like it's a little bit win more. Just because it's like you have to have other units, right? I get like the blades by themselves are not good enough without a seer to buff them up. So even if you're summoning an additional blade, if you don't really have a seer, and if you really have a seer and a seer ready, you're probably already in a good spot on winning. So I don't know. I think this spell is a little bit more bad than good, but I could see it having some fun combos out there. Then we move on to the cutest card released so far, which is Mega Tusk. And this card is a 4-mana sea monster from Bilgewater with a 3/4 stat line. Once you're deep, heal your allies and your Nexus 3. So this card is like not only a great blocker, right, against like aggro decks because of the 4 health stat line, but once you go deep, you're just healing so much value, right, to your Nexus. Is it good enough though? Is it good enough? It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Because I don't think Deep is having so much problem against aggro already. So I don't know if the heal is going to be enough to actually help Deep in the matchups that Deep needs help with. Which is what concerns me with the Mega Tusk. It is good. It is good though. It can save you against some interesting stuff, but I don't know. The worst thing to me about it is that it kind of dilutes your pool from the Joel Hunters. Which can be a little bit awkward, right? Because you probably don't rather not get this. You probably rather get the elusive fish or the Devour instead of the Mega Tusk. There is a chance that this card is busted depending on how the meta shapes out. Like against aggro, this is gonna be so good. So yeah, we'll see. I think this one is more in the good end rather than the bad end. So yeah. And then we move on to a 7-mana PNC spell, Spluttering Sunspinner. It's a burst speed 7 mana. Pick one of two new 2-cost cards, creating hand, and set the cost to 0 this round. Repeat 2 more times. So by using this, you're going to end up with 3 cards that are 2-cost spells. They corrected it. They're supposed to say spells instead of cards. They announced that during the stream. So it's 2-cost spells. You're going to end up with 3 2-cost spells that cost 0. There's a lot of good things that you can hit on PNC, right? So there's a lot of good things that you can hit on PNC. Times like Time Trick can be good. Mystic Shot can be good. Either of Improvement can be good. That when they cost 0 is fine. But I think this card is more of a meme. I think this card really works out the best in synergy with something like... what's the big cat? Like the decks that try to play as many different cards as possible. Right? I could see that being useful there. Otherwise, I don't really see this being that useful. But maybe I'm wrong. But I think this is more going to be another one of those PNC cards that are a little bit too expensive and they really have a lot of effect to really make a difference. So I don't see it seeing any play. But yeah, let's see us move on. I think that's enough. There's only so much I can say about that card. So let's talk about... So this is the skill. So Lord Broadman. Play, deal 2 to an enemy. Your fast, slow, and skills have... When I damage a stun or damage enemy, kill it. So this pretty much becomes like a Flock / Scorched Earth with any other ability that you have. It's It's a 6 mana, 2/4. The stat lines are pretty bad for a 6 mana drop. This actually makes the pool for stuff like Thriving pretty bad. Well, I guess actually not as bad, because if you hit this from Thriving, now your Mystic Shot and your Flux are just killing the enemies, right? This is interesting. I think the engine is an interesting to think about. Because now it means like anything that damages a stun or a damaged enemy is just gonna kill it instead. So your Flock becomes a 1 mana Scorched Earth, which is huge. That can also hit stun enemies, not just damaged enemies. This card is a little bit better than I thought, I think. I think the problem is going to be keeping it alive. At 2 attack and 4 health, it's vulnerable to Colin Strike, right? It's vulnerable to a lot of removal. I guess, you know, it will require the opponent to commit 2 cards. And not only that, when you first play it, you're getting rid of something or damaging something to begin with. This is more to synergize as well with like Jhin and stuff, right? Because a lot of your skills are like Jhin and Yasuo, for example. I guess it doesn't work with Yasuo because Yasuo is not a skill, so it will only work with Jhin. Huh. Interesting. I think this is one that needs to be explored a little bit more, and I could see it being useful in some of those Naxos mid-range decks that rely on like Flocks and like Scorched Earths and stuff, and actually being able to do a lot of value. Because now your Mystic Shots, if you do it on a unit that's stun or damage, can just kill them outright, no matter how much health they have, which is a big deal. So I'm very interested to see what people come up with this card. I like it. I like it. I like it. I think I like it. So let's move on with this Hunting Boar. So it's a 3 mana failure card. That's a 2/1. Cannot block. Last breath, get an empty mana gem. I think this card is pretty bad. At 3 mana, it's really expensive. And because it cannot block, you cannot chump block anything with it. So the opponent just has to, opponent's just going to have to just take the 2 damage, right? Otherwise, they give you the free mana gem. I don't know if 2 damage is enough to like really make this worthwhile. Like you can push that chip 2 damage every other turn, and I don't think that's enough to really make the opponent scared. Because if you're playing a ramp deck, the whole thing is that you want to be able to ramp up to your big win condition, right? So I just don't think this is gonna be good. I think this is probably one of the worst cards that they release. So yeah, I think the Hunting Board is not gonna really do anything. Even with it being able to push a 2 damage for free and trigger some of your plunder abilities, I don't see it being good enough. Let's move on to the Harrowing Return. It's a 4 mana Shadow Out spells that does slow. Revive an ephemeral copy of the strongest dead ally follower and give enemies -1/+0. This is interesting. So the first idea here is like Mistwraith. The problem is that they changed the way that Mistwraith works, so that now that the Mistwraith is the one that gets revived if he has more than 4 attacks. Sorry, not Mistwraith. The Mistwraith is the one that's gonna get revived if he has more than 4 attack, instead of the Wraithcaller being the one that gets revived. In the past, the Wraithcaller would have been the one to get revived, but now, once your Mistwraith gets to more than 4 damage, it's always gonna revive the Mistwraith. Which I guess is still decent, but it's just a 4 mana summon a Mistwraith that's really big. I don't know if that's worth it. The other synergy that I see here is Rekindler. You can revive an ephemeral copy of Rekindler and get another champion back. So maybe this is like a cheaper way for like Anivia, right? Because Anivia, usually the strongest follower they're gonna have is gonna be Rekindler with 4 attack. So maybe this is a way that you can, like, a cheap way to bring back another Anivia, but it requires you to have it requires you to not only have the Rekindler, but for the Rekindler to already be dead. Which I don't want to, I'm not sure how often that's gonna happen. Sorry if I just like smacked the sound. I was playing around with the sound. I just smacked my mic, so I'm sorry about that. I guess, what other synergies do we have here? Like, everything I can think of is really late into the game, which is what makes me think that this is not going to be that good. So this is going to be more of a niche card that I don't seeing any play. Let's move on. Blood in the Water is a 5 mana Bilgewater spell that has Lurk, is slow, deal 1 to anything, then rally. So this is pretty much like Chompo for Naxos, except that Chompo is deal 2 to a unit, right? And then Valley. This one, because it can deal 1 to anything and it has Lurk, there's two, and it's in Bilgewater, there's two things that I can think of. One, this is really good in Lurk decks, in my opinion. A lot of times you have like a pretty wide board. Let's say you have like the Overwhelms, right? And you just need to attack one more time to win the game. This will let you do that. And because it's a Lurk card itself, it means that you're not missing your Lurk trigger by having 3 copies of this in your deck, or even just 2 copies. I don't think you play 3. I think at most you play like 2 copies of this in a Lurk deck. But it's fine, because 2 copies plus the other 34 Lurk cards in your deck means that now you have like 36 Lurk cards, right? And we drastically reduces the number of missed Lurks. The other thing that I can think about is GP Sejuani. This is dealing 1 to anything, meaning that it can deal 1 to the Nexus. So you can deal 1 to the Nexus to trigger the level up on the GP or the Sejuani, while also being able to rally. So imagine just attacking with Gangplank twice. Or in general with just your big board. This I think is really good. Because it's better than having to play the Citrus Courier, because the Citrus Courier is a 6 mana unit, so it requires you to have 6 unit mana. This you can play with spell mana, so all you need to have is just 2 unit mana and 3 spell mana. So let's say like in a turn 7, you have 10 mana, you can do GP, attack with GP, and then play Blood in the Water and attack again with GP. That's pretty nuts. I think this card is going to be really good. Giving rallies to other regions is really good, although it is more expensive than the Master rallies, but I still think it's going to be like amazing. So yeah. So then let's talk about the Legion Deserter. So the Legion Deserter is a 5 mana, 5/4 Overwhelm with the ability again all ally everywhere buffs. This is so good. What this means is that if you have any card that buffs allies everywhere, so think of like, well, we were talking about it, right? We were just talking about like the Wraith Caller and the Risen Mist, etc., right? This will actually take that +1 from each of the Mist Calls, from each of the Wraith Callers, right? This also works with Viego and the Mist. So remember, every time you summon one of those Viego ephemerals, Viego gets +1/+1, and all the Mists also get +1/+1. So that means that this guy gets +2/+2 for each one of those. He also works with Naxos, with the Legion. Oh man, I'm so bad with card names, but you get my point though. Like, they work with everywhere buffs. It actually also works with like some cards that you might not think about, like the Darkness card, the Still Maker, the Rope Still Maker, that reduces the cost of darkness by 1 everywhere. It actually reduces the cost of the Legion Deserter by 1. This also works with the Sumpwork Carcarians from PNC, and it actually transforms into one of the Posies. This is actually such a cool card, and while it's hard for me to evaluate the actual value of it, I think it's going to create a lot of interesting decks that can take advantage of this. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this goes, because I think there's going to be some creative stuff that comes out from the Deserter, and because he has Overwhelm, it's just nuts. Like, because you have Overwhelm, I think it's just nuts, because all you need to do is get this really, really big, and then you just win the game. I guess he doesn't have Spell Shield though, but you have to be careful about that, so he's vulnerable to removal. But I don't know. This card is crazy good, and I'm excited to kind of play with it. So I kind of wondering to see what he ends up doing. So now let's move on to our favorite champion that everybody was waiting for, Jhin. So before I go on with the Jhin cards that are starting out with the Gruesome Theater right here, let me first give you guys a little bit of Jhin and what his ability, Origin, means. So Jhin has this, I guess, keyword called Origin. A champion that has Origin counts as one of your deck's regions. While building a deck, you may add specified cards to your deck regardless of the region. Some Origins may also have an effect that begins at the start of the game. So what does this mean for Jhin and for any Origin champion? What this means is that, let's say, traditionally, right now, the way that we build decks, we're going to do like PNC plus Naxos, right? Well, with Jhin, Jhin will take the spot of one of those regions. So let's say now it's Jhin is your first region, and then your second region can be PNC or it can be Naxos. You cannot do both, right? So Jhin counts as your first region, and then let's say we just pick Naxos, and that's a region combination right there. So you can only play cards from Naxos, and then you can only play cards from Jin's region. And the region from Jhin is whatever his origin, which in this case is called the Virtuoso, is whatever he says. In the case of Jhin, if Jhin started in your deck for every you may put any follower that has a skill into your deck during deck building. So that means that Jin's region is Jhin plus any follower that has a skill. We will discuss a little bit more how crazy it can be as we get up here to Jhin. So let's first talk about Gruesome Theater. So Gruesome Theater is a 2-mana fast spell. Recall a unit with 3 or less health. Not bad. Not bad. It's kind of like the opposite of the Bando spell that recalls units with 3 or less attack. I think Jhin and Illaoi is kind of nice though, right? Jhin and Illaoi is kind of nice. Health can be a little bit more punishing for certain people. So it's kind of just hitting complete different targets, right? The Bando City spell hits a lot of units with a lot of attack, with a lot of health. This one hits a lot of units that have a lot of attack, but not enough health. I don't see it seeing a lot of play, but it's potential that it could be a nice tech. It's a really good card, I think, to get from something like Oncologist, right? Because it can win you in certain scenarios against certain decks. But I don't think I see it making a big difference. So then here we get to all the Jhin cards, and we might have to flip back to that Virtuoso. Actually, I guess they have it right here, so we need to flip back. So for us to discuss all these skills, I want to just discuss Jhin as a whole. So let's talk about Jhin. Jhin is a 4-mana, 4/4, of course. And Jhin origins is the Virtuoso, which we talked about, right? So the Virtuoso means that if a Jhin started in your deck, for every 3 fast, slow, or skills you play while you behold Jhin, and remember, behold means that you either have it on the field or you have it in your hand, you get to play Lotus Trap. And what does Lotus Trap do? Lotus Trap is a skill that deals 1 to the enemy Nexus. If Jhin is in play, it stuns the weakest enemy, right? You may put any follower that has a skill into your deck during the game build. So that's what we talk about. Jin's region is the skill region. Let's move on to the rest of what Jhin does. Attack. And this is a skill, notice that. Deal 2 to all stun enemies. So when Jhin attacks, he will deal 2 to all the stun enemies, which is kind of like Yasuo. Except that Yasuo does it right away. Jhin actually requires you to attack, which I think is slightly worse. Because this, like level 1 Jhin does not actually have quick attack. Which means that attacking with Jhin can be really, really awkward, right? And his level up is you have played 12 fast spells, slow spells, or skills. This is also a pretty steep level of condition in my opinion. 12 is a lot. 12 is a lot. I guess the idea though is that you get the Lotus Trap, right? So the Lotus Trap, which triggers with any time that you play 3 of them, counts as 1, right? So really, you play 3 fast, 3 slow, 3 skills, and if you have Jhin in your hand or in the field, you will get a Lotus skill trap, so it counts as 4. So that's already 1/3 of the way to the 12. You do that 2 more times, you get that to 12 right away. I guess that's the idea behind it. Jhin himself also has a skill on his attack, so that does help him level up as well by himself, potentially. I don't know. I think it's gonna be really awkward to find a spot where Jhin actually is gonna make a big impact when he's on the board. But maybe I'm wrong. Now, when he does level up, he does gain quick attack, so now he can attack, much better. But now his thing changes from deal 2 to all stun enemy to now deal 4 to all stun enemies and the enemy nexus. So he becomes kind of like a burn condition where you're kind of dealing 4 to the enemy nexus every time. So it's kind of like Swain, right? Except that it requires the opponent's units to be stunned. Let's look at the rest of the cards before we really decide how this is going to work out. So Deadly Flourish is the skill that Jhin has, deal 2 to all stun enemies, right? And Curtain's Call is the leveled up Jhin ability that deals 4 to all. So these 2 are just his skills. So then let's look at Dancing Grenade. Dancing Grenade It's actually a spell that you cannot main deck. So the only way that you can play Dancing Grenade is by having a second Jhin in your hand, in addition to the one you play. Deal 1 to a unit, create a second bouncing hand on the next round start, create a Jhin in your deck, so second bounce just deals 4. So it's like a deal 5, except delayed by 1 turn, and it costs 4 mana. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's a good spell. Even all things considered. But I guess it does count. They're both slow as well, which makes them, I think, even worse. But I guess they do count for the Jhin level up since they're slow. And then, like we talked about, Lotus Trap. So there's a lot of things that Jhin does. So let's kind of go back and review a little bit here. So Jhin is going to be best if you have a lot of cards that can stun enemies. So we talked about the 2-drop earlier from Ione that can stun the enemy. And obviously, you can pair him with Ionia or Naxos, both of which have decent number of stuns. I guess even technically Bandle City also has like Wallop and stuff. So the units need to be stunned. Now, he can stun a unit if you have him on the field with Lotus Trap. My problem with Lotus Trap is that it needs Jhin to be on the field to actually stun. Otherwise, it's only dealing 1 to the enemy Nexus. So the only way you get Lotus Trap is to behold a Jhin. If you behold the Jhin, if you have it in your hand, you're only dealing 1 to the enemy Nexus. If you actually have it on play, you also get to stun the weakest enemy. So there's a lot of things that need to go right for Lotus Trap to actually make an impact, which I think makes Jhin a little bit disappointing, guys. I don't think Jhin itself, at least the dream of like Jhin killing units that are stunned and doing all this stuff, is gonna work out. It reminds me a lot of Yasuo. You need to have Jhin in your hand or in field, right? So you need to have Jhin in your hand and your field for you to actually get the Lotus Trap value. If you don't have it in your field, then you have to wait until you draw him. And once you draw him, he's only a 4/4. Heck, he doesn't even get any stats in the level up, which I know why they did it, right? It's thematic reasons. But like Jhin is just a 4/4 as well when he levels up instead of becoming a 5/5. It's technically a low-key nerf, right? It's kind of how like Katarina being the only champion that has an increased cost ends up being actually a little bit worse for her. So I don't think Jhin is going to be that great in the decks that are trying to actually stun enemies and kill enemies using Jhin's skill. However, where Jhin comes into play is on his origin. The fact that he allows you to play one region and a bunch of other skill abilities, skill followers from other regions. Let's take a quick look at what that looks like. So this is kind of like a diagram made by Lord.gg, kind of showing all the followers in the game currently that have a skill. Actually, this has been updated to include some of the new ones as well, as I can see the stage head and the maker here already. Right off the bat, guys, look at the first 4. What do we see here? Corsair, Saboteur, Roki, Parry Demolitionist. And then let's continue. Stagehand, Tusk Speaker, Doombeast, Astrofrots. Heck, you can even do the Captain Grey back in there. What are we seeing? What are we seeing? We're seeing the makings of one of the nuttiest aggro decks that you can think of. It's like he's grabbing all the good cards from all the other aggro decks, right? Grabbing Doombeast from Spider aggro, right? Grabbing Corsair from Pirate aggro, right? Now we even get the Stagehand. We get Tusk Speaker from Failure. Obviously, most aggro decks are always playing Naxos. So Saboteur and Demolitionist are whatever. Because what you can do, guys, is that you can pair Jhin with either PNC or with Naxos. So let's say we pair Jhin with Naxos. That gives us access not only to to all the skill cards that we say here, but it also gives us access to the 1-drop. It gives us access to the Legion Grenadier. It gives us access to Fervor. It gives us access to Decimate, all which are burn spell cards or units. Or you can pair with PNC to get access to stuff like Get Excited, Mystic Shot. Again, just kind of pushing burn there. All the meanwhile having all these ridiculous cards that can all come together. Like, Oh my goodness. This is so good. This is so good. And I think literally the best Jhin deck is not going to be a Jhin deck that tries to play 3 Jhins. It's going to be a Jhin deck that plays 1 Jhin, and the other 39 cards are just aggro cards. Like, think about this. This is 3, 6, 9, 12 already. 15, 18, 21, 21 already. 3 Decimates is 24. 3 Fervors is 27. Like, oh my goodness. And then you just need some more 1-drops from Naxos. And that gets you to 30, 33 if you play the Spider and you play the Spider. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. This is going to be nuts, guys. So this is my fear. My fear is that Jhin is going to be relegated to just being an aggro tool, that you don't even win with Jhin, that you just having to enable the fact that you can add every other skill, right? I mean, and even if you do draw that one of Jhin, it ends up being pretty good for you too, because you have a lot of skill units. So then it ends up triggering the Lotus Trap, which is actually dealing 1 to the Nexus. So it's furthering along your burn. So yeah, so TLDR, I think Jhin and the game plan of stunning enemies and killing them is not going to work out too well. But the game plan of Jhin enabling skill followers is going to be ridiculous and might lead to the most cancerous burn deck that you might ever see in the history of Legends of Runeterra. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't believe I'm going to be wrong. So we'll see how that goes, but I'm actually a little bit scared. So yeah, this is gonna be crazy. This is gonna be pretty crazy. So, but anyways, let's move on. Let's move on to the next set of cards. So we're back to Variety Day. We're back to Variety Day here, and this is the cards that were revealed on Sunday. So the first one is gonna be Consult the Heavens. It's a 6-mana target spell, fully heal an ally, then grow its power to its equal to itself. I know what people are gonna be thinking. Oh my god, TK Raka buffs. I don't agree with that. I don't think TK Raka needed something that's just going to make your Soraka 7/7. Because he's just going to be chump block, right? Soraka doesn't have Overwhelm. I guess it's nice. It's a burst speed heal. So you could get a ton of heal off of it because he fully heals the ally. So if you have like this, like a Tan Kanch or a Soraka that has like 12 health because of Astral Protection or something, and then he goes down to like 1 health, you can do this and right away get 11 health. But I think at that point, it's more like a win more. The fact that it costs 6 mana is also pretty expensive. So I don't think this card is good. Maybe there's other combos that I'm not thinking of right now. I just don't think it's good. You know, Battering Ram, I guess it's an interesting one, right? Because Battering Ram will become, like, right off the bat, like freaking 10/10. I forgot what the Ram stats are, but it's going to be pretty crazy. So yeah, I don't like this card that much. Discreet Invitation is a 2-mana PNC burst speed spell. Create a fleeting copy of Shady character or Campion check in your hand and reduce the cost by 1. So those 2 cards, and actually since I have this open, I can just show them here. So the Shady character is right here. The Campion Shadow is right here. Shady character is a 4-mana PNC card that kind of transforms the Shady character into the unit that you target. And the Campion Shadow is a 5-mana 5/2 that deals 1 to all the enemies. Both of those cards on their own are pretty bad. And I don't think that creating them from this and reducing the cost by 1 is going to make them any better. So I think this card, unfortunately, I would say is not good at all, and I don't see a scene play. Let's move on to Sands of Time. It's a 6-mana Shurima spell, burst speed, give enemies -2 this round, and create an instant sentry in hand. So Instant Sentry is a focus speed spell that reduces the countdown of your landmark by 4, or you can create a landmark on the field. For 6 mana, this seems pretty expensive to me. Ideally, I guess the best target would be Trolls. And even then, I don't think it's worth it. I guess you could technically bank enough mana and use this on turn 4 or 5. You don't have to wait to turn 6. By reducing the enemy's attack by -2, you protect yourself against aggro. I just don't see it. It's too expensive for what it does. And I don't think it's good enough. So I don't see this in play. I'm trying to think what other. You know what card this is going to be pretty good in? And somebody in my Discord mentioned this. It's going to be very good with the Achan Infinite Combo decks. Because you can play this and just instantly trigger the Achan Warlord's Horde or the Palace or the Palace or the Warlord's Horde, whatever, you know, the two landmarks are. This can be pretty nutty with that, actually. This is actually pretty nutty with that. So I could see this being useful in that type of like infinite deck, which kind of sucks because I hate those type of decks where you're kind of holding opponents hostage. So yeah, so I don't think that's, I think that's the only way that I can see this being played. Let's move on to the next card, which I think is going to be much better. And that's a 3-mana shadow spell called Undergrowth. It's a fast mana spell that's toss 3, drain 2 from a unit. Wow. Wow. Deep is so happy because I think this card is so good with Deep. Because not only are you draining 2 from a unit, which means that you're able to kill an opponent's attacker, but you're also tossing 3 at the same time. So it's like you're combining like Balfeast with Jettison, right? It's a slightly worse Jettison because it's not tossing 4, it's tossing 3. But it's a slightly better Balfeast because it's raining 2 instead of 1, although I guess you don't get the blockers, so maybe slightly better depending on your viewpoint on it. Regardless, this is going to be a staple. In deep decks, this is going to be a staple. It's going to be a 3-off, and I think it's going to be freaking amazing, and it's going to allow them to survive and be able to go deep much faster. We just posted a video recently about us playing deep, and I think I would probably play the same deck list and just add 3 of this in there. I'm super excited about this. Super excited. Let's move on to the Demacia card, which is going to be Inspiring Light. So Inspiring Light is a 2-mana slow speed spell Demacia that just grants allies on the field +1/+1. This is bad. I think this is bad. Yeah, this is bad. This is just bad. I don't think I'm going to go too much into detail. I guess it could combine. If you're able to go really wide and you can give everything +1/+1, it's not bad. But like, I'm trying to think, right? Because the benefit of like stuff like Bannerman is that Bannerman is at least another unit on the field, right? So even though Bannerman costs 4, you summon a unit, you buff everything else by +1/+1. This doesn't give you a unit, but it is much cheaper and you can use it with spell mana. Is that enough to make it worth it? I don't think it is. I think this is bad. I think this is bad, and especially bad later in the game. Like, it might be good if you can draw it early and you can storm the board and do this. But if you draw this later in the game when your board's already a little bit whittled down, then you just lose in the game. It's like a dead draw. So that's why I don't like it. So yeah. Let's move on to the Warfrag, which is a 2-mana Bilge Rider, 0/3 with Overwhelm. I have +1/+0 for each different round you have damaged the enemy nexus. Wow. So this guy has Overwhelm, and it can grow every round that you have damaged the enemy nexus. So let's say that you're like GP Sejuani or you're like Pink City and you manage to hit the nexus 3 times, like the first 3 rounds, then this becomes a 3/3 Overwhelm that costs 2. So I think this card is actually decent. And the reason that I like this card is more like a finisher. I don't think it's that good early in the game. But as the game goes longer and you have damaged the nexus in different rounds, on turn 5 it's a 5/3. On turn 6 it's a 6/3. But that means you have to actually hit the nexus every time. Actually, maybe this card is not that good. Maybe this card is not that good. It grows a little bit too slow for my taste, because you have to hit it each different round. So even by turn 5, and again, let's say that you have the dreamed hand and you actually leveled up Sejuani and GP by turn 5. This is only a 2-mana 5/3, which by turn 5 the opponent has ways to deal with this. And that's like the ideal scenario where you're hitting the nexus every single round, which is not going to happen in most normal games. So I think this card is okay, but it's not as good as some people are making it seem. So I'm not as impressed with this card as some of the other cards that we have gotten revealed so far. So we'll see. Maybe I end up being wrong though. Who knows? We'll see how this shapes out. So now let's move on to the Illaoi spells and support cards. So these are the cards that will reveal between Monday and Tuesday, which is obviously today. We'll start from the bottom and then move all the way up. But before I start with the cards itself, let's just take a quick look at what spawn means. Because I know a lot of people were confused about this mechanic when it was first introduced. So spawn is a new keyword that says summon a 1/1 tentacle. If you already have one, I know it says give it here, but Riot confirms that it actually should be granted +1/+1 plus for each spawn. So let's say that we do the Burrow Lookout on turn 5 and we don't have a single tentacle on the field. What it will happen is that the first pawn will summon a tentacle, and then spawn 2 and 3 will buff up the original tentacle by +1/+1 by +1/+1 again. So now we end up with a tentacle that has that is a 3/3 tentacle on the field. Make sense? If you already have a tentacle on the field, then instead just gives that tentacle the +3/+3, right? Etc. etc. So the idea is that it's not like a go wide condition. It's more like a go tall condition, where every time you spawn, you're making that one big tentacle even bigger and bigger and bigger. And you'll see why, because it synergizes with what Illaoi actually does. But again, let's kind of work our ways backwards and then move all the way up. So let's talk about the Answer Prayer. So Answer Prayer is a 2-mana spell that's slow, that is either spawn 2 or you can spend 5 mana to spawn 4 instead. So this is kind of interesting because it's like an or condition where you can either spend 2 mana or you can spend 5. If you spend 2 mana, you only get spawn 2. If you spend 5 mana, you end up spawn 4. It's a little bit weird that I guess they have to make it 5 mana instead of 4. So they're not making it so like 1 mana equals 1 spawn. They actually increased the mana a little bit more, maybe because spawn 4 was a little bit too powerful. Like you spend 4 mana to give something, to grant a tentacle +4/+4. Can be really powerful. I think this card is actually good in this archetype. You know, it's a cheap way to grant a tentacle +2/+2. Like it's grant, right? It's permanent. So if you already have a tentacle in the field, you're adding +2/+2. Or if you don't have one, then you get to summon a tentacle that's going to be a 2/2, or summon a tentacle that's going to be a 4/4. So either way, you kind of get a nice, powerful unit, right? That you can use to spell mana. Let's move on to the Seas. The Seas Boys. It's a 3 mana, 3/3. Okay stats, not the best, not the worst. Not having 2 health is pretty good. The fact that it has 3 health means that it can only be blocked by other things with 3 health. Attack, spawn 1, and give your strongest tentacle overwhelm this round. So this is more to synergize for when you really have like a big tentacle on the field and you want it to give overwhelm to actually push the damage so that it doesn't just get chomp block. This can give that overwhelm for that 1 round. Unfortunately, it's only give, and it still requires you to attack. But I guess when you attack, you are adding +1/+1 to a tentacle. So it's not the end of the world either. I don't know. I think this one is okay. Needing to attack with it is a little bit more awkward than something like the Camagorian Soldier, for example, which you can just play and then Crouching Mist comes out right away and you don't need to attack with her. So we'll see if this actually ends up being that useful. I don't know if it will. Then we kind of briefly saw the Burrow Lookout earlier when we were looking at the keyword. So it's a 5 mana 4/3. I think these are really bad stats for a 5-drop, but it spawns 3 when she's summoned. So again, if you really have a tentacle, it gives it +3/+3. If you don't have one, then it's going to summon a 3/3 tentacle. That's okay. So the reason that this has low stats is because technically, if you don't have a tentacle, then you're kind of spreading out your stats over 2 units. So you end up with a 4/3 and a 3/3, right? Which technically becomes a 7/6. It's just spread out over 2 units. So I understand now why the buff, the stats are a little bit low. I think it's fine. I think for the archetype, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good for this tentacle archetype. So let's move on to the Watchful Idol. It's a 1 mana immobile, which means that it cannot attack and it cannot block. 0/5. One star, deal 2 to me to spawn 1. So all things considered, even if you don't heal this or do anything, then by the time that this guy goes away, you're gonna have a 3/3 tentacle. for 1 mana, but it's a little bit delayed. It's not the worst thing in the world. The funny thing is actually keeping this alive, right? Imagine giving this like regeneration, or having something like Starspring on the field that can actually heal this. Then you're continuously making one of your tentacles very, very big. That's actually kind of cool. This might actually be a really good card for like TK Raka. Like this is maybe the TK Raka buff that we're looking for. Because you can synergize. So like if you have 2 Star Springs, then it goes infinite. Even if you have just 1, all you need to do is give it a little bit of commitment every now and then, and at the same time you're summoning a tentacle or buffing a tentacle every turn, giving you a good blocker or a good attacker that the opponent has to deal with. I don't hate this. I think this is a really good card. It's a really good engine for 1 mana. Like you just drop this down in turn 1, and it's not like you don't have a blocker. Like it's good. I guess if you drop it on turn 1, you don't get the tentacle until the next round start. But it's actually not bad against aggro if you have the attack token first, because you can play this in turn 1, and then on their turn 2, you get a 1/1 tentacle. I like it. Burrow Leader, play. So this is not a skill, so that means that this happens right away, like I see Aurelia Blades. A 1-cost ally starts a free attack. So the whole purpose of this card is that it synergizes with the tentacles. The tentacles, as we can see right here, are one cost cards. So you can play this on like a really big tentacle if you were able to give it like overwhelm, and it's gonna start a free attack. So it's kind of like a free rally to it. It also can synergize with a lot of other archetypes that have 1-drop units that finish the game. The biggest offender that we're thinking of is gonna be Fizz. It's in the same region as Fizz as well with Bilgewater. So imagine putting this in a Fizz that's like buffed up to start a free attack with him. All right, that's also pretty crazy that we gotta think about that. Okay, that's actually pretty crazy. That's actually pretty good. I think this card has potential. We just have to look at it a little bit more. And then we have the tentacle itself. Obviously, the tentacle is in a main deck. It can only be summoned with the spawn. But it's like we talked about, it's a 1-cost unit that starts as a 1/1 and grows bigger from there. Let's talk a little bit about Illaoi before we go to like the other rebuild cards that were brought out by her. So let's talk about Illaoi first. Illaoi is a 4-mana, 1/6 with Overwhelm. When she attacks, she spawns 1, and then she gains the power equal to the strongest tentacle power this round. So right away, because she's spawning 1, at the very least, every time she attacks, she's going to be a 2/6, right? Because the tentacle is going to get summoned, which is a 1/1, and give the power to Illaoi. If you have a bigger tentacle on the field, let's say you have like a 5/5 tentacle, when Illaoi attacks, it's going to give that tentacle an additional health and attack point. So now that becomes a 6/6, and then that 6 power goes to Illaoi, and now she becomes a 7/6 with Overwhelm. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. I like it. I like it. I actually like it. Huh. And she will level up once she sees tentacles doing 15 damage. So it kind of reminds you a little bit of the Shyvana level up condition, where Shyvana has to see the dragons or herself doing the damage. Same thing here, right? 15 might be a little bit too much. I think if you're dealing 15 damage with Illaoi and the tentacles, you're probably already winning anyways. But maybe I'm wrong. Because she does get the attack of the strongest tentacle, it means that all you need is a tentacle with like 7, right? And the 7 goes to the Illaoi, and that's 8 plus 7, that's going to be 15. So I guess it actually makes sense. It actually makes sense why it's 15 and not something lower. So then when she levels up, she keeps the Overwhelm. She gets 1 point of health, 1 point of attack. And now when you spawn, increase the value by 1. So that means that if we spawn 1 like she does, now instead of spawning 1, you spawn 2. Which is pretty good. So now you're adding an additional attack and health to the tentacle that's the strongest. And then fully heal your strongest tentacle, and I gain stats equal to the stats this round. So now, not only does she heal the tentacle, the strongest tentacle, all the way to full, but now she gains both the power and the health. Not just the power anymore like level 1, but also the health offset tentacle. So Illaoi, let's say you have a 7/7 tentacle, now becomes a 9/14. And that's nuts. That's really, really good for such a for a four cost unit. That's not that expensive. So then her spell is Tentacle Smash, which is spawn 3, then your strongest tentacle and enemies strike each other. That's actually amazing. That is actually amazing. Because that's what this means here is that for 4 mana, let's say that you don't have any tentacle on the field. Let's say that this is how you summon your tentacle. For 4 mana, you're summoning a 3/3 tentacle. And then the tentacle right away strikes with another enemy. So it's like a 4 mana deal 3 in a way. That can get countered though by stuff like by buffs and other stuff, so maybe not as good. But obviously, the key here is that usually you're gonna play this when you really have another tentacle on the field. And this also helps Illaoi level up, because if you have Illaoi on the field, this will actually help her level up because the tentacle is actually hitting. So this is actually one of the most synergistic and best champion spells that you can see in most of the champions in Legends of Runeterra, because it synergizes so well with Illaoi. So I really, really like this. I like this card. I think this card is going to be a staple in that archetype. So then let's move on to the last, I guess technically last 2 cards really. So the first one is going to be Eye of Nagakaboros. I don't know how to say that. I'm not going to try to say it again. It's a 5 mana spell, burst speed, spawn 2, draw 2. So for 5 mana, you're drawing 2, but you're also spawning 2. So you're summoning a 2/2 tentacle if you don't have one, and you're also drawing 2 on top of it, all for 5 mana. And it's burst. So it can be a burst speed blocker. It's a burst speed buff into a tentacle that's already existing, while also drawing 2. I think this card is really, really good. I think more draw is never bad for us. Oh man. I think this card is amazing. This is really, really good. I don't think what else I can say about it. I think this is going to be a staple in the Illaoi archetype. And then lastly, we have Nagakaboros, which is like a big finisher. So think of like the Hadrobai from Viego. I said that this one is a little bit more different because this one's actually trying to finish the game by attacking. So the Nagakaboros is an 8 mana, 5/8 fearsome. At round start, it's spawning 2, right? Then, if your strongest tentacle has 12 plus power, create a Nagakaboros Tantrum in hand. And the Nagakaboros Tantrum is a 0 mana focus speed spell that you can actually do right away at the start of the turn. Wait a second. Because round start, if at round start your tentacle has 12 attack, you get this right away, and because it's focused, you can do it right away. And Nagakaboros starts a free attack with 4 Nagakaboros tentacles, which when they're summoned, they grow their stats to that of the strongest tentacle, and grant me the keywords. And remember, for you to get this spell, your strongest tentacle already has 12 power, so you're attacking with Nagakaboros and 4 tentacles that all have 12 power without using your attack token. Without using your attack token, because this is a free attack. This is one of the coolest finishers that I've ever seen in this game. This is such a cool finisher. Oh my god. And if you guys didn't see the video, it's so cool because like the tentacles spawn to the left and to the right. So you end up having like this synergistic Nagakaboros. That is like really freaking cool. Oh man. Now, okay. As cool as it is it actually good? Is this actually good? Well, let's think about it. It's an 8 cost unit. So the moment that you summon it, you have to play around stuff like Vengeance or other forms of removal. And when you summon it, it does nothing. Because it has to wait until round start to spawn 2. And if you don't already have a tentacle that's powerful enough, then the spawn 2 is, I guess it's doing something, but it's not doing like that big of a deal. So that's why it kind of works a lot like the Hadroban, where you're continuously spawning like a tentacle. I think as cool as this card is, I think at most it's like a one-off in like Illaoi decks, just because of how it is to actually trigger the condition. I feel like if you already have a tentacle that has 10 power or close to 12, you're already almost winning the games in other ways. So it kind of feels like a win more condition, but it might be good enough. It might be good enough like a Leviathan, right? It might be good like a Pharaoh. Like there's a lot of good age ups out there. It's not like the age ups are doomed. I'm just very afraid that like the moment that you play this, is gonna get recalled by Will of Ionia, Defiant Dance. It's gonna get Vengeance. It's gonna get many more. It's a lot of ways to stop this from actually doing anything. They don't even have to actually deal with this. They can just deal with your tentacles instead. So yeah, overall, this archetype is really cool. Overall, this archetype is really cool. I think what I really like about it is the fact that it's self-contained. It doesn't really require, like, it's not like Lurk, right? Where Lurk you have to play both Rek'Sai and Pike to really make it work. Illaoi kind of just works by herself. Like, all her cards so far are in build squad. Now, there is a chance that maybe we have 2 more champions that are going to be revealed in the next week. Maybe one of those champions is supposed to synergize with Illaoi. I doubt it, though. But even if there's no champion that synergizes with Illaoi, I think by herself, she has gotten enough support that she's actually pretty decent. And she can synergize with a lot of other things that can keep your tentacles alive or buff them up, right? So think of stuff like Udyr that can give you tentacle regeneration or can give a +2/+2 to get you closer to that win condition of having a big tentacle and a big leveled up Illaoi. I like this card. I think I'm excited to try this out way more than Jhin, because again, I think Jhin is just going to become like an aggro deck. But I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Illaoi though is looking super spicy. I love it. I love it. Oh man, this is so cool. And the fact that she has Overwhelm is also really nice. You can synergize with some other fun stuff. I know there's a certain man out there called Rico Rex that's very excited to try out this deck as well because of the Overwhelm. Oh wow, this is gonna be cool. My only problem with Illaoi is that it kind of feels like Udyr a little bit, where it's very vulnerable to like Vengeance and other forms of removal. And Illaoi needs to attack, right? So she needs to attack, and even with 6 health, there's only so much that you can attack safely without getting burned out. It makes it really vulnerable to direct removal like Flock and Scorched Earth, because every time that you attack, you're making yourself open to getting damage on your Illaoi, and then the opponent being able to do something like Scorched Earth. So that's my only concern about this. I think this archetype is really, really cool. I don't know if it's actually going to be good enough, though. That's my only concern. I think this is actually one of the cards that I'm most excited about. Watchful Idol kind of seems cool, and I think it has some potential, even in a deck that's not relying on spot. But yeah, I mean, those are all the cards so far. I'm sorry you guys waited for me this long to give my reactions. Hopefully it was worth the wait. It ended up being a little bit longer video than I expected. So yeah, but I mean, like always, if you like the content, please make sure to like the video below and subscribe to us. We post LOR videos every single day. We'll be back tomorrow with a regular gameplay video. And then potentially what I might do is wait until we get more reveals, and then do another like bulk reveal video maybe on Friday night. And then we'll do the last one on Monday night. My guess is that one of the next champions is going to be released on Friday, and then the last one's going to be released on Monday. That way they get Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for one champion, and then they get Saturday, Sunday, Monday for the last champion. If that's the case, expect another one of these videos on Friday night, and then another one and then the last reveal video on Monday night, and then we'll go from there. In the meantime, we're still gonna do our regular gameplay videos. What I might do is bring back the Blast to the Past series, where we explore some of the old decks from all archetypes. So we'll see how that goes. Whew. Okay, enough rambling. If you stayed this long, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you all again tomorrow, and I hope you enjoy these cards and start theorizing how to build these decks, because I know that I am. So yeah, I'll see you all again tomorrow.